So happy birthday, Kubernetes. First of all, I was going to do this talk being, from a security perspective about how you should all make sure that you're not always using the latest tag for your images, because default doesn't mean most secure. But then BMK asked me to write something or say something about my journey with Kubernetes. And so I did ask ChatGPT to draw something up for me. And DALL-E made me a superhero and put a martini glass in my hand. So I just had to swap topics after that. And yeah, flattery will get you everywhere. Thank you, ChatGPT. Now it's all about you. But I started my career in IT at VMware in the graduate program. So I used to call myself a virtual native as opposed to a cloud native, because I came in just as everybody was adopting virtual machines. And I guess my journey with Kubernetes started with Docker, because my partner's a developer. And I just remember very clearly one day he was like, so can I just show you this container thing? Because I think that your job might be at risk soon. This is like a really, really, really long time ago. I can't even remember the date, but it was well pre-Kubernetes. It was early Docker days. And I was like, okay, show me. And I took it back, and I remember asking my manager, because I was still quite junior. I hadn't started as a graduate that long ago. And they were like, no, we'll be fine. This is just like dev tools. We work with IT folks. But fortunately, I listened to my partner a bit, because he was in the dev world. And I started getting curious. I didn't go and learn it just yet, but I kept an eye on it. And the more I thought about it and the more I listened to my customers, the more I realized, like, if I want to be relevant in the future, I'm going to have to learn about the app world and why this is such a big deal to devs. Because otherwise I'm going to end up just, plugging in network ports somewhere. As an old school IT person, which I didn't want to, I never liked the hardware stuff, so I didn't want to end up there. So as soon as I got a chance, which was quite a lot later, I decided to teach myself to code. And we used to live in Singapore, and we took a bit of a break before coming to New Zealand. So while we were road tripping around the South Island, I was learning Python as much as I could. When I came back to work, my new boss was like, hey, so we're putting together a team to build a Model Mars rover for our next industry event in Sydney. It's gonna be showing off some network SD-WAN stuff that VMware does. It's gonna be showing off our IoT device management. It's going to be showing off our observability tools, but we need to make it cool, so we're going to make Model Mars rover that talks to base through all of those tools. And I was like, okay, I know Python now after a month. No, it was probably 2 months, but still the hubris, because I'd only just started. I want to write the code to drive it. And he was like, okay, cool, you write the code to drive it. And I was like, yeah, I'll have it done next week. So luckily, I didn't know anyone in Wellington yet. This is like when we first landed. So I just used every waking hour, every weekend for 6 months. And I say I wrote it because it's important for my relationship with Kubernetes, because I made all the mistakes of being the single point of failure, being the only one who knew how to build the code, building it all in a monolith. And it's sort of funny, because at the same time, VMware was starting to get on board with the cloud native modern apps story. So at work, I was learning about how everybody's breaking things down into microservices and decoupling and everything. And I sort of knew all this in theory, but meanwhile on the weekends, I was just writing as fast as I could. And meanwhile, one of my colleagues was over in Sydney building a physical rover-looking thing. Getting the hardware, getting the motors, which, for those of you who have done anything at all with IoT, you know that the code actually has to match what you're doing in hardware. So I kind of threw it over the fence, and then notice the jerkiness. It's like, I promise you it didn't look like that the night before. It actually drove the night before. We did have lots of problems along the way with dev and ops where we struggled to get things to work, but we were up till midnight the night before, and then we did actually get it to work, run smoothly the night before we all went to bed. And then this was like 10 minutes before opening time, and we had a big queue of people out the front because marketing had done this big push of come and see our Mars rover. This is an event called V Forum that has like 3,000 people at it. And then we're like, why is it so jerky? We hadn't taken into account the friction of the floor. And I'd hard-coded the variables on the, they should have been variables, but I'd hard-coded the time intervals that the sensors would read the distance to make a decision about which way to turn. So I was there 10 minutes before opening, like trying to reprogram the time intervals, and it was across like 3 different files. Anyway, I went back out of that experience being like, now I see why I'm learning all these things about dev and ops from a cultural perspective. So what Sai was talking about why we decouple things, and then learning Kubernetes made so much sense to me because I was like, these are the reasons why we need something where we can update individual components without conflict, where we can loosely couple things, where we can have things come back online if they go down. So I almost took that out, but thanks to your request for production stories, I know in some ways it's kind of like a weekend high school project that I did from a coding perspective, but it was production in the sense that we had all these V4M attendees coming to see our rover. So yeah, that's my story and love story for Kubernetes. And then after I left VMware about 2 years ago, I went on to Sneak, where I was helping people adopt tools, but also go through the people process transformation, bringing the security part into DevSecOps. And I've just joined Palo Alto Networks in March because I wanted to go a bit deeper on the cybersecurity side in general. So, probably don't need to say this, but AI adoption is very, very fast, even compared to other technologies that were rapidly adopted, internet, mobile, etc. And a group that has adopted it from day one very, very quickly were the hackers, the bad guys. So these are some of the stats I took from my employer to give credit of, what they've pulled up from Wall Street Journal showing that the speed, the time it takes to exfiltrate data has reduced. So the speed that these attacks are taking place has increased. So it's gone from days for a 0 day to be exploited to a matter of hours. The scale, because you can get AIs to run attacks for you at scale. And the scope, so there's more things that can go wrong, like the classic one that you've probably heard a lot about with AI is prompt injection. Getting AI that's scanning, trawling the internet to do things that it shouldn't do, and so on. But I think that the most important point on that front that I want you to take away is every attack can now be customized to you. So in the past, we would, and even like 18 months ago when we talk about security, a lot of what we'd talk about would be, we've got these exploits of vulnerabilities that are discovered, and those are 0 days, and then those get distributed on public forums, people learn about them, they send out advisories, they give them a score, and you all go and patch stuff. And then hopefully you're safe, and there's some time that you take to do that patching. We can't afford to have a patient zero anymore, because I guess it's been a risk that the security industry and even the IT industry as a whole has accepted in the past, that there will be a patient zero. Somebody's going to get hacked, then we're going to learn about this no longer 0 day, it's now day 1. but then everybody else gets to benefit from that. And security tools from vendors and so on have always been designed in the past to take that data from a database and then tell everybody else about it so that you can defend yourselves. So just keep that thought in your head. I'm going to come to a question for you soon. Another thing I want to point out is like how this applies in New Zealand. So a couple of years ago, a ex-colleague of mine from VMware, Emma Tordson, who's now at Workday, and I did a survey of state of Kubernetes in New Zealand in 2022. And one of the key things that came out of that was that the top security concern that people had that was preventing adoption of Kubernetes was a lack of security expertise. So I think in addition to that, we also asked what's the top thing, not security, just the top thing in general that's preventing or blocking adoption of Kubernetes. And the top thing, 73% of people that responded said it was lack of skill set in the marketplace on Kubernetes in general. And so, I think that there's a high risk out there that people are struggling with like work overload. Like the people in the room here have the skills, but there's not enough people to hire enough people to do the things. And then you add increased focus on security on top of that. It's no longer a separate security team's role to do all the security with DevSecOps. The whole idea is that we bring it all the way to the left. You write your YAML files and your Helm charts with that in mind. You scan it over there. Now suddenly it's your problem as well, on top of everything else that you have to worry about. So what I wanted to do with any time that I have remaining today, I'm not sure if I've already used it all up, but was just get you all thinking about it from a hacker's perspective. So red team it. And just, I guess, quick disclaimer, what am I going to use this for? It's just for you, really, for the Kubernetes community. I'll give it to BMK, he can distribute it, to get you starting to think about if you were a hacker with AI in your hands, how would you attack your Kubernetes deployment so that you can start to become aware of that threat level increasing without it just me lecturing you from a security perspective about all the bad things that can happen. So I should have asked you right at the start to get out your phones if you haven't already, because this is only going to work if we get some participation, but I can also just get you to put up your hands and talk. So I started it off with just, a random one. How would you use AI to red team your own Kubernetes deployment? So while everybody's getting out their phones, oh my gosh, this is so much smaller than I expected it to be, sorry. That code, 378273. So, oh my gosh, it's easier. It's better if I don't say it because I'm getting the numbers wrong. 37827693. For those of you who have menti.com.
The URL is menti.com?
Yeah. menti.com. And the code is 37827693. Yay, we've got somebody. Awesome. So while I wait for a few more people to come on, I'll explain what I meant by, open source intelligence gathering. That's something that hackers do. They look at your LinkedIn profile, they go, oh, you're the Kubernetes admin at ASB Bank, and on Facebook you have your kids' names, your mother-in-law's names. You've announced when you're, going on holidays, and maybe that's going to be a vulnerable time when you might not notice some activity on your account. I'm going to try and see if I can crack your admin password with the combination. And in the past, that's always been a human activity. So hacking, there's like hackers who specialize in social engineering, who don't necessarily have the hardcore tech skills, but are really, really good at this stuff. Well, AI can do that now. And not only can an AI do it once, but it can be doing it while you're sleeping. It can be doing it while you're sleeping and having a guess at the password that you might be using and brute forcing it in a staggered way, where if you've got timeouts, so like if you try and brute force somebody's account, you can get locked out after 5 attempts. But if you get an AI to stagger that so it tries once a week and rotates through the different people who might be admins, I don't know that our current security tools are going to block that. So, read in API responses or source code to try and formulate a curl request to hit or DOS a potential vulnerable endpoint. DOS, denial of service. So basically drown out your cluster's ability to perform through noise. And I'm going to take that opportunity to drop one of my sort of little, going back to the original, don't always use latest tags. Another one is make sure you're aware of the default configs in Kubernetes that may not necessarily be secured. Just a FYI, if you don't put CPU and memory limits intentionally, they don't exist, and a denial of service will take advantage of that and take over all your capacity. Ask ChatGPT ideas on red teaming to hack a kube deployment. Exactly. And also, just while I'm here, Palo Alto Networks doesn't have any affiliation with OpenAI. There's just a link I put into the slides that you'll see on your phone, but not up here, that OpenAI has an initiative to drive this kind of thinking, and they actually have grants at the moment if you wanted to do something in this space, like build some kind of open source tool that's specific to securing Kubernetes or red teaming Kubernetes, you could potentially get some funding from OpenAI. And they've also got a series of ideas if you want some hints on that link, which you'll find on your phone. Have monitoring set up to alert if anything suspicious is happening. Yes, absolutely. And another idea that I've seen is that you can, because you have AI, now you can do more than just on your own. You could even do things like set up a honeypot with an intentionally open ingress to the internet and see what happens, and then monitor that. List all Kubernetes vulnerabilities and try random ones. Absolutely, it can iterate on that. So yeah, all this stuff is great. Did anybody who's contributed here want to add on to it by speaking? Okay, that's all right. I haven't been keeping an eye on the time, but I think we're 2 minutes. Yeah, okay, so I'll wrap this up now. But yes, thank you so much for all your responses. There's a lot of good answers here. I'll send that link to the OpenAI page to BMK along with the slides, because that's got the list of ideas as well. And I just wanted to add one more thought, which is all of this is really great. There's a whole other aspect to security that's introduced with AI though. Because if you're putting all this data about your Kubernetes deployment into just public ChatGPT that you've subscribed to that's not your corporate account, you're actually then giving it to a third party that doesn't necessarily have all the controls set up to keep that safe. 100%. So use it, but be careful where you use it. And then also, if you do end up deploying your own model to try and be secure, then you also have to secure that model. So just be aware of all of those things. There's tools already in the market. Palo Alto has one, other vendors are doing it, that does AI security posture management, just like we do Kubernetes security posture management, cloud security posture management, application security posture management, that will tell you how all the things connect, all the different parts, the data to the chatbot to, the shopping cart. So yeah, I guess today's talk, I wanted to get you thinking about it. Like I said, I put the title, Securing Kubernetes for the Next Decade. It's not necessarily all stuff you'll do today, because some of those questions around how you do that safely still need to be answered in general, in policy, also possibly within the organization that you work for. Some of those answers are going to come from open source, which is why, and I'm sure other AI companies probably have a similar thing. OpenAI is just the one I'm familiar with, that they have this grant available to kind of crowdsource how we're going to solve these problems. And I thought it would be that grant isn't for Kubernetes, but I thought it would be really cool to have some focus on how we do it for Kubernetes, because ultimately, as you know, like as James said, as others said in their talks, Kubernetes is becoming the OS. Yes, it was you. It's becoming the OS that we're all running our critical infrastructure on these days. So it's a really important point to secure. So yeah, that's hopefully given you all some food for thought. And there's some stickers on the table that say shift happens, which I think are pretty cool, because it is happening. Left, that is, and also some socks. So please help yourselves to those. Thank you.